The Gorosei, ladies and gentlemen. The 5 strongest geriatrics this side of Shady Shoals Retirement Home. They might not be able to eat solid food anymore, but they could still eat you up and spit you out and still be home in time to watch Matlock every Wednesday at 1 p.m. only on the TV Land Network. There's only... Okay, there's only one man who's qualified to defeat them. One man who could go into Marijois and execute every single one of the elders. That's right. Captain William D. Chapston of the Devil's Luck Pirates. Don't worry, I know William. I've already sent him a letter, and he'll get on it whenever he feels like it, or maybe not. I'm not really sure. You can't really direct William to do much of anything, but if he gets around to it, he will eliminate the Gorosei, so do not worry about this. We got an expert on our hands here, okay. Where did the Gorosei come from? Are the Gorosei, did they used to be real people? Did Im recruit them, or did Im, like, spawn them out of themselves? That's kind of the stuff we're going to be talking about today. So there's an idea. I'm just going to throw this out there. I mentioned it in some other videos. So I like to think that the Gorosei did not all exist at the same time that Im rose to power, you know, during the Void Century. We can assume that if Im is the same Saint Imu Nerona that Ivankov talked about, like one of the original saints of the 20 families that founded the world government, if it's the same person, which it might not be, there might be some stuff where this Im used that Im's name. You know, it might be some things where maybe Imu Nerona was this Im's, like, best friend or something, and then they died and they assumed their identity. Like, it could be something like that. Who knows? But if we are to assume it's the same being, something happened during the Void Century to make Im immortal, to make Im at least unaging, to the point where maybe they can die if certain conditions are met, but those conditions have never been met in the last 800-something years, and they still exist today, and they still rule the empty throne, okay? I don't think all of the elders were there at the same time, okay? I don't feel like they were other saints that ruled over, like, the original 20 families, okay? I think there was something very special with Im that allowed them to become immortal, okay? And then, at the very beginning, maybe Im did rule with an iron fist as just the sole monarch, as it were. Maybe not, like, the world didn't know that there was a sole monarch, because that's the whole point of the world government, is, like, they pledge their allegiance to the empty throne. So maybe Im had, like, okay, I'm gonna sit on the empty throne, I'm the real ruler, and maybe I'll have some servants do, like, the busy work. But after a while, it became very clear, as the government grew and truly became a world government, you know, it's one thing to put some weapons in front of a chair and then say, we have founded a world government, and it's another thing altogether to actually unify over 170 nations on the entire planet. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, at the very beginning, it was a world government in name only. All right, we conquered Marijois. The Lunarians have been kicked off. We've pledged allegiance to the chair, to the united world government of the world, and now what? I was like, okay, well, now we need to start unifying islands. We need to get out there. There's an economy. There's agriculture. You know, all the different aspects of running an actual government, okay? So Im was probably like, you know, okay, this is too much. This is too much for me. I need to recruit some people that I can trust, that know about my existence, but can handle the day-to-day activities. Do you think Im is up there crunching the numbers on the world economy? I don't think so. Do you think Im is up there plotting, like, okay, the soil on this island is very fertile this time of year, so planting season should begin? No. Im doesn't have time for that crap, okay? So Im started slowly but surely to recruit the Gorosei. And probably how this happened was that, you know, Im is aware of the other celestial dragons and maybe selected a few of them of just like, okay, Top Man, okay, you know, Venus Juro, you know, you come into my chamber, into the Phantom Room, and then we perform some kind of weird-ass ritual, and then you become immortal as well. I'll share part of my power with you, and then you will now have the ability to transform into a strange yokai creature, or I'll give you a mythical zone or something like that, and then you will be aware of my existence, but but you'll keep it a secret from everybody else, and you'll also handle, the economy for me, or something like that. So I don't like to think they were all gathered at the same time. It was like a process. Some Gorosei are older than the others. Now, for the most part, they all look like old dudes, and we saw that with Saturn. Saturn even is an old guy, but when he goes into his yokai form, it's like he ages even more. Like he gets way more saggy, as it were, And so he goes from like right now, I don't know, I would say Saturn in his normal form, his human form, he looks like, I don't know, in his 70s or something. When he goes into his like ancient spider form or whatever, he looks like he's like, like 1,000 years old or something, like, Maybe not necessarily that old, but we'll see how this goes. So when Saturn was summoned using that circle, you saw a bunch of 5s on the circle, right? Okay. Well, what if each of the Gorosei had a designated number? That's an interesting way. They might all have 5s because they are the Gorosei. They are the 5 Elder Stars, so maybe each of the circles all look the same. We didn't really see the circles that clearly in the last chapter when they were all summoned at once, but maybe there is an order, and maybe Saturn is just number 5, okay? So that got me thinking, like, okay, if Saturn is like number 5, maybe he's the most recent one? And I'm thinking, okay, well, if he's the most recent one, then who is the oldest? And also, would it be like, as the world progressed, more Gorosei had to be added? Because, like, look, let's look at the fields that they each reign over, okay? So we got agriculture, finance, justice, environment, and then science and defense, okay, is Saturn's. I'll be honest with you, out of all of those fields, science and defense, it does make sense to have a representative that handles that in a government, but like compared to the other 4, it just seems a little bit out of place to me. Okay, maybe if it was just defense, but that can kind of be thrown in with sort of like justice a little bit, Science and defense, it seemed like it was the odd one out. I don't know. It's just, to me, it is. Okay, maybe I'm just overanalyzing this or whatever. Okay, so what if Saturn was the last of the Gorosei to be added? Okay, and this happened around 200 years ago. So relative to Im, this was recent, but around 200 years ago, when the Iron Giant attacked Marijois, which was a remnant of the Ancient Kingdom, maybe like, okay, the Iron Giant attacks, and then it loses its power, and then they like kick it off the side of the red line, and so the Tenryubito are all razzled and everything like that, and then Im is sitting there and just like, the remnants from that accursed kingdom still plague us. We need a member of the elders to represent scientific knowledge and achievement. Maybe it was like a thing where the ancient kingdom, yeah, we do know it was scientifically advanced, but then after it collapsed and the world government kind of like degraded everything and kind of like regressed everything back to an earlier point in history. But humans are tenacious and they're curious. And so maybe scientific, they're trying to stymie scientific growth as much as possible, because if they don't, then we might have another ancient kingdom. But at the same time, it's like people will progress, humanity will succeed. And then maybe when the giant showed up, it was like, oh my God, how many more of these things are out there? How many more of these ancient giants, these iron giants are out there that could climb the red line and attack? We need a representative, somebody to deal with science, okay? And so maybe 200 years ago at the time, Saint Saturn was the lead scientist in the world. He was like the Vegapunk of his day. Now, maybe not as smart as Vegapunk, because Vegapunk was even able to get one up over on Saturn, and we saw that like recently. Vegapunk's clearly more brilliant, but when it came to Saturn, he was like pretty smart for his time period, and so Im is like, summon him and Jaygarcia Saturn into my chambers and I will share my power with him or something like that. And he became the 5th planet or the 5th star, the 5th elder, okay? And so maybe he's the most recent. Or there's an argument that could be made that he's the oldest because the ancient kingdom was scientifically advanced. So maybe if Saturn came from the ancient kingdom, he would have that scientific knowledge. There's an argument for both that it makes sense either way, okay? We really got to see like the way the other summoning circles look. If there's, like Venus Juro is a 1 or something like that, or they all just look the exact same. They're all 5s, and it's like, oh, okay, it's just, I get it, because 5 planets, and then there's a 5 on the summoning circle for the 5 planets, and then that's just it, okay? If you're going to try to put the other ones in order, it's once again, like, like I'm looking at this chart and I'm like, okay, environment, justice, finance, and agriculture. What do I think would be the first one to put? Like if you were Eam and you were the only ruler at this point, at the very beginning of the founding of the world government, you're the shadow monarch, okay? And it's like, I need to recruit somebody to help me with this. Venus Juro, Ethan Baron Venus Juro, seems to me like the oldest one out of all of them. He also dresses different from all the other ones too. They all wear suits and ties and everything like that. Well, I don't think Shepherd Jew Peter. I don't think he wears a tie, but he has a suit. You know what I mean? He leaves his chest open. You know, he's a rebel Gorosei, and he has a sword, which is probably the Shodai Kitetsu, right? And so he looks the oldest. So maybe he was the first. If there was, like, they were recruited one after another, maybe if he was the first, and he was the minister of. So I'm like, okay, like, the world economy is pretty important. Like, that is a significant thing that you would need to have your thumb on pretty good if you were going to create a world government. Like, where is all the money coming from? How to get the money from, you know, the various heavenly tributes from the various islands and stuff like that. Like, if you control the world economy, you kind of control the world, you know? That's kind of the whole idea. So I could see that. I could see finance being the very first thing, all right? So Eam is like recruits Venus Juro, and he's the minister of the finance. He's the godhead of finance and the economy and everything like that. And it's like, okay, control the world's berry, and then we will control the world. That's probably the quickest way to control things, you know what I mean? Just cold, hard cash. Okay, there you go. Makes sense. Next up, I'm going to say Top Man. He is the godhead of justice, okay? So on top of controlling the economy, now you control the justice system with the existence of Eni's Lobby and that whole system of, like, Impel Down being there and the Marines and everything like that. That is probably where the Marines came to be. Almost as if, like, Venus Juro is like, all right, we will control the world economy. But in order to do that, we're going to need, like, a branch of military in order to control everything. That's probably where the Marines came from. The Marines were probably an extension of the Justice Department. I know this isn't 100% how it works in our world, but this is One Piece, you know what I mean? In the United States, we have like 15 or 16 secretaries of various, you know, government agencies and stuff like that. In One Piece, I guess there's only 5. So it's like you gotta double up on some actions here, okay? But if it's through Top Man that it was recruited, and then he has this epic mustache, you know, and everything like that. He's like, oh yes, we shall form the strong arm of the government, and that's the Marines, and probably the Cypher Pole also came about from that and everything else. Okay, cool. Then we get environment and agriculture. Feel like see, here's the thing. You could also argue agriculture being the first, because controlling the money is a good thing, but also controlling the food supply also is a thing that you control the world's food supply. I mean, yeah, so you could see Jew Peter as well, but then he's one of the younger looking ones. So it depends, I guess, when you get turned, because we know that Saturn, at least in his human form, does not age. Or at least not in a noticeable way, because we saw him 38 years ago at God Valley. He looks the same as he does now, okay? And, you know, we saw that, like, one panel with the Gorosei all in silhouette when Vegapunk was meeting them, and they all pretty much looked the same. Like, the idea is they look the same as they do now. So the idea is maybe when you get turned into a Gorosei, you just stay that age. So most of them were changed when they were old, but maybe Shepherd Jew Peter, maybe he was like a maverick or something. He was this young man, or relatively young man, maybe he was in his 40s, but you know, he knew a lot about agriculture. Maybe he was the foremost leading expert on agriculture, and they turned him into a Gorosei relatively young compared to the other ones, and he just maintains that guise, okay? Also, the idea is that, wouldn't it be interesting if the youngest-looking Gorosei turned out to be the oldest? Like, he was the one recruited first. So I could see that from finance or agriculture. I think the environment came a little later, because the environment is more about, like, I view it like deforestation and managing your, like, resources on individual islands. That would come maybe a little bit later, you know, when it's like, hey, a lot of the islands that we have are beginning to get, like, deforested and polluted, and we're not careful, like, they can destroy the ecosystem, and we're not going to have enough food, and of course, at the end of the day, like, not really so much for the lower realm, but, like, if we screw this up, and we don't manage the environment well, then the food for the Tenryubito might be like degraded or lessened. We may not be able to get as much food to them. And so I may be like, okay, we need a minister of environment. So if I was going to put this in order, I would probably go finance, then justice, followed by agriculture. And those three might be relatively close to each other. I used to think it was spaced out a lot. Like, one of the Goroseis was recruited, 700 years ago, and then 500 years ago, and then 300 years ago, But it might be like those first three might have been, like, pretty quick in succession. Like, finance, agriculture, justice. Those three seem like the most important ones, like, out of the gate, okay? Especially if the Marines came out of the Justice Division, all right? We don't know how old the Marines as an organization are. They were around during the when the Giants, like the giant warrior pirates, were captured, and we at Marineford when they were about to be executed. So that was like 100 years ago with like Mother Caramel and everything. So the Marines were definitely around 100 years ago. I think they were around during Nolan's backstory, right? So that would have been 400 years ago. I'm pretty sure they were mentioned during Nolan's backstory. So they probably came about shortly after the world government was formed. So we go justice, finance, justice, agriculture, and then maybe there was a gap for a little while. Maybe there were only 3 elders for a little while, and then 400 years ago, 300 years ago, something happened where it's like, okay, we're beginning to overlog and stuff like that. We need to, like, okay, environment. All right, so the 4th Gorosei was Marcus Mars. And then, or the 4th elder, I guess I should say, was Marcus Mars. And then maybe the thing with the Iron Giant happened, attacking Marijwa, knocking everything down. And then that's when, like, okay, we need a minister of science and scientific defense. And so we will get Saturn for that job, okay? The Gorosei all have, not all, but a lot of them have scars on their body. Like, Saturn has a scar, Shepherd Jupiter has a scar, Top Man has, like, a birthmark. So from what we see, at least what we glean from how they fight and how they can regenerate, the scar was probably on their bodies before they were turned into whatever they are now, which also means, because they can't heal their scars, or I guess they choose not to, but it seems like they just can't. Whatever state their body was in when they were changed, that's their base state now. They can't do anything about that, okay? So, that kind of right away kind of proves they used to be human. Or at least they used to be mortals, okay? They used to be mortal, they used to be human, and then Im did something and then transformed them into that. You could go with the argument, like, maybe they were born out of Im, and then maybe, why would Im give them, like, these specific, like, why would Im give Top Man that very distinctive, like, birthmark if he was just, like, an aspect of himself? But you could go really symbolic with this, and, like, oh, the birthmark on Top Man is metaphorical of Im's own, there's, like, you could go with, like, symbolism of this really deep, but so we're not going to go way down that rabbit hole or anything like that. But I think Gorosei used to be human. They were not all recruited at the same time. They were not all there at the very beginning, and they were recruited throughout the centuries, okay? Maybe some more in quick succession than others, okay? Now, something else. When Sabo returned to Kamabaka and was having that meeting with Dragon and Ivankov, and he was, like, debriefing them on everything that he saw at Marijwa. Like, you guys aren't going to believe this. There is a shadow ruler named Im with a giant crown that sits on the empty throne, and he's the ruler of everything, or they're the ruler of everything, you know what I mean? And so they start, like, hypothesizing who the hell this could be. And then Ivankov is like, well, it might be Imu Nerona as a member of the Nerona family. And Ivankov pulls out a book, okay? Now, originally, when I did the review of that chapter, I thought the book read jeans on it. Not jeans like these fabulous Levi jeans on sale at... No. But I don't even know if these are Levi's. Are these Levi's? I don't know. I stole Levi Ackerman's jeans. Don't tell him. Oh, yeah. Throw Levi at the Gorosei. Nothing could kill Levi. William and Levi working together. They could take out the Gorosei in an afternoon, dude. That wouldn't even be difficult. All right. So What was I talking about? Genes? Okay, the book. I thought it said Genes, like genes, like genetics, okay? So I thought like Ivankov was pulling out a book that was like, oh, here are the genetics of the 20 families or something like that. Now, it might just be a thing like the way it looks in the chapter, the way it was like scanned, or maybe Oda, didn't write something correctly or something, because English is not his first language. But a lot of people are thinking it doesn't actually say genes, like genetics. A lot of people think it was supposed to read Genesis. Like Ivankov pulls out the One Piece equivalent of the book of Genesis and is like, oh, Imu Nerona right here. And that kind of blew my mind because I was like, wait a minute. If it's supposed to be Genesis, then that means that is basically the world government Bible. And it would make sense that there's a world government Bible, right? Like the propaganda that the government spreads to the world, it would make sense that in like all the schools in all the world where children learn about the world government, they would have a book that says Genesis, and like this is the scripture of the origin of the world government. Like in the beginning there was chaos and destruction, and then the 20 families arose, and the names of all the families would be in the book, right? Like they would make damn sure that the people of the One Piece world knew this version of history that they are spinning. Like these are the 20 heroes that ruled the world, or at least maybe not the names, their full names, but they would at least know the family names. You know what I mean? They would know the family names. I guess the given names too, because Imu Nerona is in the book, right? So is Lily in the book is the thing. I mean, it says like they did know, like it seems to be common knowledge that the Nefertiti family, or the Nefertari family, sorry, Nefertiti was an actual Egyptian. Yeah, okay. So Nefertari family was like, they know that they used to be the original families. They just didn't stay in Mauritius. So apparently they are in the book. So in this book of Genesis, this One Piece equivalent of Genesis, there's probably a page that lists all the families and which islands they were from, and who was the saint that originally, pledged their allegiance to the empty throne, and maybe a little bit about their genealogies, just like how the Bible is a book of genealogies, and like, son of this, son of him, son of this, and everything like that. Could it be something like that with that book? I kind of want to see that book now. I kind of want to, like, that. If that book is really like the One Piece Genesis book, I would like, yeah, I want to see the way the world government is painting this. Like the way the government is like, this is how it came into existence. Because we don't know the whole story there. The story is probably something like the world was shit and full of barbarians and just death and plague and everything was awful. And then the world government came out of nowhere. The 20 kings allied. It's like, we've had enough of this debauchery and this barbarism. And the 20 families came together and they made everything amazing. And now we're so happy the world government is here. Maybe the book of Genesis talks about the Lunarians, or like, oh yeah, there was a group of demons that lived on top of the Red Line back in the day, and it's a good thing the world government killed them all, so now we don't have them anymore. Now we rule the world. It's probably some shit like that, in there, probably justifying slavery and everything in that book. But the fact that book like exists is kind of like, I want to see the way the world government is spinning this compared to the way that we're actually going to find out the way the world exists. That is something interesting. I just realized, it's like we get bits and pieces of it, but the way that the Rio poneglyph and the true history of the Void Century will really hit the hardest is if we could compare it to the false narrative. So maybe at some point we're going to learn about the false narrative. Maybe Robin, when we get to Elbaf and we're seeing Saul, maybe there might be a moment where Robin, and I'm sure Luffy would not care about this. Luffy would go off and play with the giants with Usopp or whatever. But Robin might be like, hey, so let me tell you the story of the way the government explains how it came into existence. Because the government has to give the people something of a story. In fact, it would be stupid if they didn't, because this is an advantageous thing for them. The history is written by the victors kind of thing. You could make it whatever you want to be. You could have it like, okay, the government descended from on high. Oh, the sky parted and the saints descended and they saved the world. You could write whatever bullshit in there. You rule the world, So the government would definitely have a narrative. Maybe not all the Straw Hats know about it because they just didn't care about reading books or whatever. And so Robin explains that to like Nami, and maybe like Brooke would listen, Jinbei would listen. Jinbei might know a little bit about it. Luffy and Usopp are off, they're just, or Chopper as well. They're hanging out with the Giants or whatever. But Robin explains the government narrative. And then later, like, when we get to Laugh Tale, find the real Poneglyphs, okay, this is the real story. And maybe there might be certain elements that might connect back. There might be like, well, this character was mentioned in the false history, and they do show up like, Joy Boy might not be named in the world government version, but there might be a figure, maybe some kind of Satan figure in the world government's narrative in Genesis. And the Satan figure is never named, but it was Joy Boy. And the government's like, and we slayed Satan, and the government saved the world, like something like that. And then it's like, Robin is like, oh, maybe the Lucifer Satan figure in the government's book of Genesis is Joy Boy in the true history. Like, okay. Like, they might be doing something like that. But it's an interesting idea, yeah. So anyway, that's the video. Hope you all enjoyed. And we are just off break week this time, so next week we'll get back to it. Chapter 1110. Some crazy's going to happen. You know what? People keep making fun of Dragon. I think this is the chapter. Dragon does something. Next chapter of One Piece. We're going to see a bunch of nonsense happening at Egghead with all the Gorosei arriving, and then we're going to cut to Kamabaka. And I swear to God, we're going to see Dragon, and he's going to get up off that chair, and he's going to walk straight over to the vending machine, and he is going to put $1.50 in that vending machine, and I swear by everything that I believe in, the berry, I guess, everything in this world, he's going to push F5, and he's going to get that root beer, he's going to pick it up out of the vending machine, he's going to walk back over to that table, he's going to open that can of root beer, and he's going to drink at least half of the can before he sets it down and he forgets about it and it goes flat, and then a couple of hours later Lindbergh is cleaning up after everybody else and he sees that half can of root beer and he asks, hey, does anybody have this root beer? Is this anybody's? No? Okay. Yeah, it's kind of flat. It's been sitting out for a while. Okay, I'm just gonna chuck it. And then they're gonna throw it in the garbage can and they're gonna bring it out to the curb, and then the One Piece equivalent of the garbage truck's gonna come by on Tuesday morning, and it's gonna pick it up, and it's gonna take it to the dump. Go to the end screen, please. I can't keep going with this.